Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Stay Safe from Malware. My name is Jesse, coming to you live from the Maslin Public Library here in our recording studio. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. Tonight's class is going to focus on malware. We are going to talk about how you can protect yourself from malicious software. Before we do that, I'd like to just introduce myself and Jeff, who's with us here. So my name is Jesse, as I said. I am a technology trainer here at the Maslin Public Library, and we do these online classes on a variety of different subjects, and we've been doing this for about a year. So if you like what you see, check us out. We'll be doing this not next month, but then at the beginning of the year, we usually do about one per month. I'm joined by Jeff, who is with us here at the library, and he's going to be giving us his insights and also keeping track of your questions. So let's switch over to Jeff and let him introduce himself.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Missed out on last month's Windows 11 class, had a prior engagement, so hope you guys didn't miss me too much, but I am back to help Jesse. So I'll be here kind of watching the chat. If you guys have any questions, send them over there. I'll relay them to Jesse, and we can make sure we get your questions answered.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Well, we will be checking back in with Jeff as we go on throughout the class. So our topic tonight is malware. And so malware is a term that is maybe not very well understood by a lot of people. Malware basically is malicious software. So any software that is malicious, that is intending on harming you, that is the software that we are talking about. So when it comes to malware, there are different types of malware, one of which is viruses. So viruses are pretty well known. Spyware is another type. Spyware would be software that spies on you. And then also ransomware is kind of a newer type of malware that would actually take your data and your computer hostage. And the people who would develop that would want you to pay them in order to unlock it. So those are the different types of malware. Now, malware is a very serious problem. It's a very big deal. If you are an individual and you have a computer, a virus or another type of malware can make your device completely unusable. It can just completely ruin it. If you're a business, malware can affect your livelihood, right? If you're relying on your machine to make money and then it's not working, you're losing money. And likewise, if you are an individual or a business and you have financial information that is compromised by malware, then it can cost you a lot of money and even lead to things like identity theft and other very bad things. So malware is a big deal, right? Malware can affect any device. So we are going to be focusing on Windows, and Windows is the primary target for a lot of malware because it's used so much and because there's some security, maybe vulnerabilities just as part of the design of Windows. You know, you have a lot of control, but then a lot of things can possibly go wrong because of that control. Other devices are not immune to malware, though. So if you have a smartphone, a tablet, that could be an iPhone, could be an Android device, even a Mac, a Linux computer, none of those devices are going to be completely safe or completely secure. So there are maybe varying degrees of safety, and maybe some platforms are more secure than others inherently, but there is no device that is going to be immune from malware. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about how you can protect yourself from malware, and I've devised this with kind of 3 topics for tonight's class. So the first topic is going to be talking about avoiding malware. So we are going to talk about how you can take practical steps in order to avoid malware and avoid getting infected in the first place. What we're going to do then is look at antivirus software. So antivirus software is what comes to a lot of people's minds when we talk about malware and protecting ourselves. We're going to talk about what to look for in antivirus software. And finally, we're going to look at how you can remove malware. So how to remove malware from your machine if you are infected. So we've got a lot to cover tonight. If you have any questions as we go through this, as Jeff mentioned, we have a chat that's available. You can also email us, trainer@masslinlibrary.org is the email address, and we will try to answer your questions as they come in. And we do appreciate any questions that we get. So without further ado, let's jump in, and we will start by talking about how to avoid getting infected with malware. And the first thing that I want to talk about with this section is actually a mindset that you need to have in order to avoid getting infected. Now, a lot of people, when they think about malware and they think about security, they're thinking about a piece of software to keep them safe, or they're thinking about, well, this device has these security features. Those actually are not the most important aspects of security. The most important aspect of security is not a piece of software. It's not a piece of hardware. The most important aspect of security is you. You are the first line of defense when it comes to security and when it comes to malware. That's you. So before we talk about any kind of software, we need to talk about you and your awareness, or your sense of awareness when you're using your device. There is no piece of software that's completely safe or completely foolproof. Anything can be, compromised. You need to develop an instinct, or you could call it like an intuition, about what is safe and what is not safe. And that will serve you far better than any kind of antivirus program, or than any kind of new computer, new phone. That instinct, that sense that you have, will keep you out of trouble. And so what I want to do in this class right now is go over about 4 things that you can do to kind of start to go down that road of developing that sense or that awareness. So these are just 4 really easy things that anybody can do, and if you do these, if you put them into practice, you will prevent yourself from even succumbing to malware in the first place. Number 1 is going to be to keep your software up to date. So when it comes to the software on your device, keeping it up to date is very, very important when it comes to security. Now, you might ask why. Why is it so important? Well, whenever any kind of software is written, so first, people who develop software, the programmers or the software developers, they write the code, and they're not perfect. They make mistakes, or they overlook things, or there are things that nobody knows about, as far as security problems. And those problems, when they are recognized, they will be fixed. And so that comes in the form of updates or patches, or there's different names. But software gets fixed and it becomes more secure over time, or at least that's the idea. If you're not installing updates, you're not getting the benefit of those updates. So in updating your software, updating your device is very, very important. Now, the question might be, well, how do we do that? How do we keep our device up to date? And so I'm going to show you how to do this on a Windows computer, on a phone. There's other kind of mechanisms for getting updates, but we're going to focus on Windows right now. So I'm going to switch over to my laptop here, and you should see my desktop on the screen now. And we are going to go to the Start menu, and this is Windows 10, by the way. So you go to Start, you'll go to Settings, and then within the Settings menu, we will just go down to Update and Security. And then this is Windows Update, and you can check for updates. So I hope it's not going to start installing updates here, but I just wanted to show you the process. This is where you can check for updates. You'll usually get updates a few times a month, maybe once or twice a month. And you can see that it's offering me a major update to a newer version of Windows 10. You'll see security updates come through here. You'll see bug fixes. All kinds of different types of updates will be issued through Windows Update. But this is something that you absolutely want to do if you own a Windows computer. if you don't own a Windows computer, if you have a Mac or you have a phone, you get updates too. And so on your device, you will want to go through the settings usually and check for updates, on your device. Now, on Windows, there's the operating system updates, and we just kind of looked at that, but there's also the updates for the individual programs. So for instance, if you use Google Chrome as a web browser, so web browser is what you use to get on the internet, keeping that up to date is really a big deal because you use your web browser so much and you put so much sensitive data into your web browser that you want to make sure that is as secure as it can be. So I'm going to show you how to check that also. So if we hop back over here to the laptop, if we open up Google Chrome, it should do updates automatically, but if you want to kind of check and see where you're at, you go to the menu, these three dots here, then you go to settings, and then if you go down to the bottom on the left sidebar, it says About Chrome. You click on that, it will check for updates automatically, and you can see it's telling us that Chrome is up to date, which is good. You would always want to be on the most recent version of your web browser if you can, just for security. So number one, keep your software up to date. Number two is going to be a little more maybe practical. It's going to be look before you click. Look before you click. So not look before you leap, look before you click. We click on a lot of things on the computer, or if you're on a phone, this would be tap, not click, right? But we're constantly tapping or clicking on things. And when it comes to tapping or clicking on links, you really want to kind of be careful about doing that. You don't want to just click on things kind of haphazardly, and then all of a sudden you're in a place you don't want to be, and then maybe you get infected with malware. So look before you click. So I'm going to show you one example here, and we're going to hop back over to the laptop in Google Chrome. If we search for something, so if we go here and we'll just search for library, right? Since we're part of a library. So we're searching for libraries, and we can see the search results. Now, interestingly, we are the top result here, Massillon Public Library. Before you click or tap on a result in a search engine, what I want you to do is I want you to look at the actual address. So right above the link, this is the link. We all know kind of links are these blue things, and your pointer changes to the little hand. Right above that, you've got an address. So https:// and then, it's got Massillon Libraries domain there. You want to check that. If that does not check out with where you think you're going, if you think you're going to the library's website and it's some weird thing there that has nothing to do with the library, that might be one where you want to pass on clicking on that link. If it looks like what you would expect, massillonlibrary.org, that sounds about right. Even if I didn't know that was our web address, you can go ahead and click on that. So that's one way to kind of vet a link before you click on it. If you're on a computer, another way that you can sort of check out a link is by hovering over it. And so hovering over it just involves laying your mouse pointer on top of the link. And if you'll notice, I'm going to do it, kind of remove it and then put it back. Do you see that little box at the bottom that pops up? It actually shows you the address of the link you're going to click on. So this is another way that you can kind of scout out a link before you click on it. So those are two things that you can do to check out links and to make sure you're not going to risky websites accidentally. Links would also be a big deal in emails. If anyone sends you an email and it's got a link in it, I would be a little more suspicious of that, just because of the fact that email gets compromised so frequently. And that actually is a good segue to our third point. So point number 2 was to look before you click. Point number 3 is to be wary of attachments. Be wary of attachments. So attachments are files that are sent to you in email, and they're attached to your email. And we all probably recognize the little paperclip, right? That is that's the icon that's associated with an email attachment. Well, when you get an attachment, you really want to pause before you open it. Attachments can either be good or bad. They can either be legitimate or they can be illegitimate. And the illegitimate ones have a really high chance of being malicious. So if you see something and it looks like it's from somebody you don't know, do not open any attachments in that email. The rule of thumb that I've come up with is an attachment could be safe, or you can maybe think it's safe if it's from someone you know and it's something you expect. So something you expect from someone you know. That might be an attachment I would open. But if it's not something I expect, even if it's from somebody I know, I'm not going to open that attachment, because attachments very frequently can be not on the up and up. You want to look out for specific types of files. So if you see a type of file with a .exe or a .zip or a .html at the end of it, that's the file extension, do not open those files. Those are almost always going to be malicious or not on the up and up. And so I wouldn't even waste my time trying to open those, because I guarantee you that's going to be malware of some sort. All right. So be wary of attachments. So number 3 is be wary of attachments. Number 4, and this is the last little rule here for this section, is only download things if you have to. Only download, and I could have said here only install new apps or new programs if you have to. So when it comes to viruses, most viruses are introduced to your system when you make a change, when you install a new app or when you install a new program, and then you actually kind of bring the virus, in. It's like you open the door for it and it walks in. If you just don't install new things unless you have to, and if you're very cautious about doing that, then you will avoid even accidentally installing something that's malicious. So it's a good practice to just not load down your device with a bunch of things that you may not need. For one, your device will run quicker, but the more important point for us tonight is that you have less of a chance of accidentally infecting your device. Those are the rules and there's probably more, but those are just the ones that I can come up with, that if you follow them, if you just kind of put them into practice, you will generally be safer than you would be otherwise if you did not follow those rules. So try to put those into practice. The next time you see a link, maybe pause and check it out. Next time you get an attachment from someone in the email, kind of pay attention to, is this something I expect? Is this from someone I know? And if you start to do that, you will avoid a lot of pitfalls, and you won't even get to the point where you're infected with malware. All right, let's go ahead and check in with Jeff and see if he's got anything he'd like to add.
No, nothing so far. I mean, you kind of scared me with having to worry about myself as, watching out for malware. So, but yeah, so far, everything seems real quiet over here.
Gotcha. All right. So let's go ahead and we will move on to the next section. So we've talked a lot so far about how to avoid getting infected with malware. Now let's focus on antivirus software. And this is probably what most people expect when it comes to antivirus or to safety. This is the first thing they think of probably. What kind of antivirus software do I need? So I would remind you of the kind of the rule that or the truism that we just talked about in the previous section, which is you are the first line of defense. So do not rely on any piece of software to keep you safe, because if you do that and you engage in risky behaviors, there is no type of software that is going to protect you from risky behaviors on a computer or on a phone. If you are going to sites that are kind of sketchy and you're doing things kind of irresponsibly, or maybe things that you shouldn't do, there's nothing that's going to keep you safe 100% of the time. You don't want to rely on that. You want to be the first line. And then the second line of defense is your antivirus software. And on a Windows computer, antivirus is very much necessary, I would say, on a Windows computer. I have heard of people running, a Windows computer without that, but I don't think I would recommend that. And probably Jeff would agree with me there. I would think that, antivirus is kind of necessary on Windows. Now, it's debatable on other platforms. So like on iPhones or on Android phones or on a Mac or on a Linux computer, there's kind of a debate to be had there. There's some people who say you should run security software regardless, and there's other people who say, well, no, you may not need it. I would say, if it's debatable in those other cases, Windows, there's no debate. You need antivirus. The question then becomes, what kind of antivirus should I get? Because there's all kinds of different options out there. There's probably some that came with your laptop, and you're thinking, well, do I need to pay for that? So how do I determine what is a good piece of antivirus software? I have 3 criteria that I'm going to go through as far as what makes antivirus software good. And so the first piece of criteria that I have is that it will provide real-time protection for you. Real-time protection. So real-time protection means the antivirus software is running all the time. It's not taking a break. It's always on the watch. You don't have to run a scan to see it, right? Number 2, as far as criteria goes, is that it would be up to date. So you need the latest virus definitions or malware definitions. So if you have antivirus software, but it was old and it was outdated and you didn't pay for the new stuff, that's not a good place to be at. You want antivirus software that's up to date, that's always getting the latest kind of definitions for what is bad, what is dangerous. Number 3, as far as criteria goes, is that the antivirus software should be free. And this is something where people maybe could disagree with me as far as, I have antivirus software and I pay for it and I'm comfortable with it. And I would not argue against you, if you are in that situation and if you have something that you pay for and you're happy with, that's great. My sense is that there are good enough free options out there that for the average person, you don't have to pay. Now, if you want to pay, you can. Or if you're a business, I think it makes maybe a little more sense to think about paying if you have, bigger, more complex needs. But for the average person, I think the free stuff is actually pretty good, and it's what I would personally use, and it's what I do personally use at home for myself. Now, as far as what, people will always ask, well, what do you recommend? What's the best? And so there are a lot of good options, I think, but my choice as far as what I use on my own computer at home is I use something called Microsoft Defender Antivirus. And so Microsoft Defender Antivirus, that is software that used to be called Windows Defender, and then before that it used to be called Microsoft Security Essentials. So it's went through a variety of different names. The thing I like about it is that it is built in to Windows 10 or Windows 11. Don't have to install anything else. It's right there on your machine. It stays in the background. So if you have if you have sort of an antivirus that is asking you to upgrade all the time, that's kind of one of the downsides of some of those free ones, is that they want you to pay for the premium version, and they're always kind of nagging you. Microsoft Defender Antivirus does not do that. I don't even really notice it, honestly, except for whenever it says it does a scan or when it needs updates. That's really the only time I ever notice it. It gets updated with the operating system. So when you get your Windows updates that we just looked at, you get the updates for Microsoft Defender Antivirus as well. And then finally, it runs scans. And from what I've seen reading reviews, at least a while back, it was pretty good. It had gotten a lot better. At the beginning, it was like, it's kind of just mediocre maybe, or at least from what I recall. But then when I looked at the reviews a few years ago, it was being rated as high as some of the other ones and even some of the paid options. So Microsoft Defender Antivirus, if you're asking me, that's what I would recommend for your antivirus needs on your home computer. You only want to run one piece of software at a time when it comes to antivirus. You don't want to have two going on, because then they'll kind of maybe conflict with each other and your computer will be slow. You only want to run one at a time. If you choose, you can download another antivirus that only runs scans, and you can use that as kind of like a second opinion, so to speak, as like a second line of defense. But it's important that the secondary antivirus does not provide real-time protection. If it does, that's where you'll run into problems, right? So you need to make sure that secondary antivirus does not provide real-time protection. An example of that is I used Malware in the past. Malware has a paid version that is real time, but then the free version, it just does scans whenever you choose to have it do scans. So I would occasionally do that. I don't really do that so much anymore. But if you wanted an extra layer, you wanted like a second opinion, so to speak, you can do that. Just need to make sure that they're not fighting with each other, and you will be okay as far as having a secondary one on there. All right. That is my overview of antivirus software. So again, criteria there to remember. You want something that's real time. You want something that provides updated definitions, and then finally you ideally would want something that's free if you are looking to maybe save money, and the free options are good, especially that Microsoft Defender antivirus, at least in my experience. All right, let's check in with Jeff, and actually I'm curious, Jeff, I don't know that I've really talked with you about this much, but what do you use the built-in Microsoft antivirus software?
Yeah, so at home I also use same as you.
Okay.
Microsoft, what is it now? Microsoft Defender Antivirus is what I'm using. And then for Linux and Mac, I do not use an antivirus for either of those. But in fairness, I'm not on those operating systems as much. Right. So
yeah.
Did have a good comment in here about how some of the paid ones, how they like to they can slip in lots of other stuff, which is true, good and bad. I think they're trying to sometimes give you like value for money, but there's also tons of stuff in some of those packages and you don't even know what they are, like the email scanners, and it just becomes overburdensome, I guess, and kind of a challenge.
Right.
So I'm not here to like knock paid things either, but yeah, they can be more than maybe what you need.
Right. And that's what I like about the Microsoft Defender antivirus, is that it just really stays out of the way. I don't even see it for the most part. No. So, it doesn't have all that extra stuff.
Yeah, as long as you're doing your updates, because the Defender updates do come in the Microsoft update packs. So, just make sure you're staying up on those and you'll be good. We got another question in here. Avast and Malware. So yeah, I think that'd be a good combo. Avast is also a free antivirus as well.
Right.
And then you could pair that with the Malware that Jesse was talking about. Is that sort of like offline scanner? I think CC Cleaner, is that another one that's similar, or is that kind of different? I think CC Cleaner can look. I don't think that.
I thought that was more like to clean up files, honestly.
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah. But it's similar. They're built similar. They kind of run offline and check and do that outside of your antivirus. So if you feel that maybe you have something that your antivirus isn't picking up, you can use one of those programs.
Yep. And it's been a number of years since I've checked out Malware. I have used it on my phone on occasion. There is like an app on the phone, which is a lot different than the PC version. But yeah, it's been a number of years, so I can't testify, now how good they are. But they were a good option for that secondary scanner, in the past. So
yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for
Yeah,
the
no problem.
comments. Appreciate that. So we're going to go ahead and move along to our last topic for tonight. So far we have talked about avoiding malware. We've talked about antivirus software and some of the considerations surrounding that. What I want to do now for the last portion of the class is focus on removing malware. And this is kind of your guide to the uh-oh moment. So, that moment when you clicked on something and you realize, whoops, I installed something that is not good. It's malicious, and I need to get out of trouble. This is when you realize you've gone too far and you're trying to bring it back. The number one thing before we even get into the steps, and I have it's 4 to 5 steps. The 5th is kind of an optional step. But before we get into that, what I want to talk about is just your mindset. We talked about the mindset at the beginning, as far as you were the first line of defense. Well, in this situation, it's sort of like you would feel like, well, that first line of defense failed. And the main thing to keep in mind is that you can deal with it. So don't freak out. Just try to remain calm. Call somebody if you need to. If you're sitting at home and you think you got infected with a virus, call a family member and have them take a look at it and maybe tell you what they think. There are situations that I've seen where people think that they have viruses and they don't. A computer running slowly, for example, is not evidence that you have gotten infected with a virus. So computers can run slowly for a number of different things. It could be, that there's always the chance that you have something malicious kind of hogging up your resources, but that's not guaranteed. So I would not jump to that conclusion every time something bad happens. And then if you do think something bad happened, just kind of try to stay calm and just go through these steps. And if you go through these steps, you can get your machine back in working order, and you can salvage your data and everything that you have on there. Step number 1 is going to be to immediately disconnect from the internet. If you think you are infected with malware of any type, disconnect from the internet. I would even go so far as to consider pulling the plug on your router, honestly. Like if you don't know how to turn off the Wi-Fi, or if you don't know how to, unplug the desktop, take the Ethernet cable out, just go to your router, pull the power plug, and then, that you'll be good. Routers usually can, that's actually what people recommend. If you need to reset a router, you pull the power plug. So you're probably not going to be harming anything by doing that. The reason you want to disconnect from the internet is because if you have downloaded something malicious and it's running on your computer, once you've given it permission, it can do whatever it wants to do. And it could phone home. It could be, kind of mining your data and sending that back to whoever is running the operation. It could be downloading other things without your knowledge. So once you have a machine that is compromised, it is essential to get it off of the network, to disconnect it from the internet. All right. That's step number 1. We're just kind of sort of quarantining the problem, right? Step number 2 is going to be to run a full offline scan. So this is a complete scan. This is not one of the quick scans. Microsoft Defender Antivirus has a quick scan that takes about, anywhere from a minute to 5 minutes. That's not the scan you want to run if you think you have a virus. You want to run the full, complete scan of the entire hard drive. And that can take a while. It could take maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours if you have an older computer and you have a lot of stuff. Run that complete scan and run it offline. If you have good antivirus, it should be able to do that. It won't need to be connected to the internet to run a scan. Disconnect from the internet, run a scan with your antivirus. The third step is going to be to actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. The third step is to quarantine or remove the malware once you find it. So your virus scanner, as it goes through, it will discover things, and it'll say, what do you want to do with this? You can either quarantine it, which is kind of leave it in an area where it can't hurt anything, kind of in its own little bubble. The second option would be to remove it. So if you want to get rid of it at that point, you can do that. You will have a third option, which would be to restore the program or to let it run. So if it found something and it was a false positive, you can restore that or allow that program to run. Now, I would not recommend doing that if you think there's been an infection, right? An a virus or a malicious software infection. But if it's something that's like an accident, maybe it picked up something and it's not really a problem, you can do that. So you want to quarantine or remove. The fourth thing is you want to go to another computer and download a secondary antivirus program and put it on a USB drive and then run a scan with that secondary antivirus program. Now, the reason why we're having you download this on another computer is if you have an infected machine, you don't really want to reconnect to the internet and then go through all of that, because then that opens up that whole, can of worms, right? You want to go ahead and go to another computer, put in a little flash drive, download the installer for the program. So it could be something like Malware or one of the other ones. And then you can go back to your computer, run that scanner, and then it will pick up things maybe that the other antivirus didn't catch. And that's kind of the whole idea of this is, we want to run one scan and then we want to kind of get a second opinion and make sure that we caught everything, because maybe your primary antivirus missed something. It's always possible, especially if it is a brand new type of virus or type of malware that's out there. It's a good idea to run, at least a couple passes with different programs, and they will detect hopefully everything. All right. At this point, you should be okay in a lot of cases, but if you still feel like it's not safe, or you're still wondering, well, did it get everything? There is an option for you. Now, it does involve a lot more time and a lot more inconvenience, but it is a very good option if you want to completely wipe away any traces of malware. The fifth step, and this is optional, would be to back up your data and reinstall Windows. If you had a very bad infection, maybe your computer is infested with different programs that you don't want, programs that, are malicious, that are giving you kind of weird results, I would not try to go through and manually pick out, what's good and what isn't. I would go ahead and just wipe it clean and start over, honestly. This is kind of the last resort. It definitely is a big inconvenience, but you can do it. It actually, honestly, doesn't take as much time as you would think it does, unless you have lots of particular programs that you need to reinstall. I could, with the laptops we have here at work, usually I can go from a complete new install to a working computer in a couple hours. If it's just a really simple, straightforward kind of thing. So that is something I would consider doing if you are having a very serious infection. And if you just want the peace of mind, you're like, well, I ran the scans and everything, but I want to be sure, I can go ahead and you can reinstall Windows. The reason why I would not suggest you do that as step number one is because you want to make sure that the data you're backing up off of the computer is not itself compromised and is not itself infected. So running scans on your documents and everything will make sure those are clean, and then you can pull those, off and then, reinstall Windows and then put them back on. It's a whole process. I wanted to mention it because it is something, like, it's probably what I would do if I thought a machine was infected. Other people might not do that. They might not go to those lengths, but it is an option for you. All right. Those are the 5 steps, or you could say 4 steps, for what to do if you have been infected with malware. So don't panic. follow those steps, disconnect from the internet, run a full offline scan, quarantine or remove items, and then finally run a secondary scan. And then if you want to, go ahead and back up your data and reinstall Windows. That will get you out of trouble and get you back into working order. Let's go ahead and check with Jeff and see if he has any thoughts or if we got any additional comments or questions on the chat.
Yeah, no, that's all good stuff. It's no fun to get a virus. I've worked with some people who have, and it can be challenging and time consuming. So there's no real just quick fix most of the time.
And as you say that, Jeff, I was kind of thinking, like, I've never actually seen anybody who has fallen prey to ransomware, but I know that can be a particularly bad predicament because then all of your stuff is kind of held hostage.
Right.
Have you ever encountered anybody who
ransomware? I have not personally. No.
And I know that the one thing with ransomware, if you have your stuff backed up regularly, it's no problem at all. You just wipe the computer clean and away you go. You don't have to pay them money. You don't have to, do anything special. So, yeah. All right. Well, we will go ahead and kind of move into our conclusion here. So just to recap, we have talked about avoiding malware. We talked about 4 things that you could do practically to avoid getting infected with malware. We've also talked about antivirus software. Excuse me. Antivirus software. We talked about the criteria for selecting quality antivirus software. And then finally, we have talked about removing malware. And so that was basically your kind of get out of trouble guide, right? So what do you do if you have been infected with something malicious? What I want to end with is where kind of I began, or at least at the beginning of the class, where I mentioned one of the mindsets that you need to have when it comes to security. And the biggest, most important mindset that you can have, or the attitude that you can have, is that you are the first line of defense. Don't rely on software to protect you. Software is never going to be 100%. There is always going to be something that can get through the cracks, that can infect your computer. You could have the best, state-of-the-art antivirus that you're paying a lot of money for each month, and you can still get infected. You want to have good habits. You want to have a good awareness or a good kind of instinct for what is safe and what isn't. And if you do that, you can avoid getting infected by malware. It's possible. You don't have to fall prey to these things. Just have that good instinct and approach your security as something that you're responsible for and that you are the first line of defense for. And if you do that, you will avoid all the problems associated with malware and viruses. I want to check in and see if we had any questions here before we kind of call it quits for tonight's class. Did we get anything, Jeff?
We have not.
Okay. Do you have any final thoughts before we?
No, I mean, I think antivirus is something you do have to think about, but you want to be, mindful in what you do. I know a lot. If you have a slow old computer and you load it up with a bunch of antivirus software, like Jesse said, it can just make the situation worse. So just go in and kind of be smart with how you're handling it, and you should be okay.
Right. Yep. Totally agree. All right. So we are not going to be doing any classes next month. For those of you who kind of follow us month to month, we will be kind of taking the month of December off. So we hope you guys have a good Thanksgiving, Christmas, all the holidays. And we will see you guys in January for our kind of restarting of this, where we'll have new topics, both online and in person. So stay tuned. Check out our website. We'll be sending out information about what's coming up. Thank you guys for joining us. And remember, you are the first line of defense, and you have the power to avoid all of this malicious software. Put into practice what you learned tonight, and you will stay safe from malware. Thanks, everybody, and we will see you next time.